So yesterday, I believe that I made a reference in this series of work that I'm performing that explore the reception and life of a particular work called A Labyrinth of Visions, which, as I've said a number of times, is an embedded work in a larger working process and performance piece called Acts that in large part deals with the social construction of mental illness and the way that that plays out in our contemporary society and in representations of mental illness in literature as well. But that bears upon work that I've done that's related to other forms of difference, particularly non-normative positionalities in our culture and in other cultures as well. And by non-normative, I mean labels that distinguish the ableist mind and body from differences which are perceived as socially inferior to the ableist mind and body. And so yesterday, as I was saying, and then my sentence elaborated itself into something of a paragraph or two. Yesterday, I think I made an explicit reference to this social construct of the misfit. So I had thought, well, I wonder why I made that reference now, and I had thought about this image of Phineas P. Gage. Now, Gage is an individual who is known for having suffered a traumatic brain injury. And in this image, you can see that one of his eyes is not completely functional. He lost that when this metal rod that he is holding struck him from below and passed, through his head, through his skull, and miraculously he survived, but had extreme injury and trauma to the brain. So Gage, has been referred to as he had one of the consequences of this traumatic injury, this brain injury, was personality change, and apparently this personality change only lasted for some period, and then Gage was able to recover and deal with this physical trauma, and the brain, whether it was the brain itself that performed the recovery or the spirit and will of Gage, he was apparently able to come to terms with this physical loss that impaired his mental ability or personality. But in any case, Gage is often referred to as sort of the Rorschach test of theories of brain injury and personality change, because like well, like so many other examples of human tragedy, you know, he became a tool for individuals to utilize in you know, constructing their own passive success, or whatever you want to refer to it as. He became you know, the mouse in the maze, or the rabbit test subject for pharmaceutical products, or whatever it was. But you know, Freud had his favorite subjects as well, and they were all really fodder for careers, right? So Phineas Gage's story became fodder for many, you know, psychological and cognitive theories, and I think what reminded me of Phineas Gage were, well, two things. The first is that the description of this particular, you know, portrait of Gage in the on the Wikipedia page has the following caption: Gage and his constant companion, his inscribed tamping iron, sometime after 1849, seen in the portrait that, and then in quotation marks, exploded the common image of Gage as a dirty, disheveled misfit. So that word misfit, you know, reminded me of this image, and then, you know, the confidence and the power that he exudes holding this tamping iron. I should, you know, say something about this reading. The strength of the hand and the grip on this iron, and holding it as he holds it like a warrior holds a spear, right? So it becomes an emblem of his almost royal bearing, right? This and then the one-eyed man who, in some ways, you know, can one miss the reference to Woden or Odin, you know, the one-eyed seer, right, who sacrifices a physical eye to gain the visionary eye. I mean, to me, that reference, you know, registers powerfully. And then this look, you know, this uncompromising, you know, gaze, and the tidiness of the image, but mostly the strength and the bearing of this warrior who holds you know, this weapon, you know, once, you know, designated by fate perhaps as the vehicle of his destruction, but, you know, having completely mastered it and unafraid to bear witness to his own history, right? So I liked the idea of this image coming in to the picture at this point in talking about misfits, and it seemed to me that, you know, this idea of Gage as Phineas Gage as Rorschach test says a lot about the way that our individual mindsets and perspectives, you know, inflect the way that we see the world. So this is all about what I do, right? I'm very much interested in, you know, not only physical differences, but cognitive differences, and the way that we as individuals respond to those differences, and the way that society utilizes those differences to ensure the results of capitalism, and it does so at the expense of individuals. So, you know, to me, this image of Gage is iconic of the kind of work that I do. Well, the other thing about this image is that it also refers, I suppose, in some interesting way to a piece that was created by my third editor, Jesse Glass, who took Phineas Gage's story and turned it into a poem, and Jesse Glass's exploration of this individual is, you know, more or less to create, I don't even know what you would call this genre, but there's a genre of American literature and poetry that, you know, in certain ways relates to perhaps, I don't know, it's like the beat version of L'Autrement, or the Painted Bird, right? Where you dwell upon like these aspects of human nature as abjection, but in this like this performance of this exuberance of language around berating humanity, and Glass's, you know, work, you know, basically, you know, does that a lot, but it's not a genre that you know, is unfamiliar. So Gage, you know, is used in his piece as you know, an exemplar. I mean, there are like rock songs that do this too, right? Like, you know, the name calling rock song, right? Or it's not altogether unlike what I was looking at yesterday in Lou Rowan's version of Superman, right? Where, you know, you can see in, maybe it's too obvious to me, I don't know, but you can see no matter what one says about oneself, right, on the surface, but where one's language turns to insult, you can see where one stands. So, you know, when Lou Rowan, you know, uses words like idiot and disparages individuals with, you know, either physical disabilities or you know, mental, you know, differences, this to me betrays, you know, the relationship that one has to those concepts. Now, no one's ever going to say, well, you know, here's a story, right, that'll relate, you know, to my discussion here. I mean, this is a long way into the relationship that I have with Aha Dada Books, by the way, and the third publication of a piece from A Labyrinth of Visions. But maybe this story will help. So in one of my capacities, following the performance of the first set of acts, which the first set of acts that really focused and bore upon the social construction and positionalities within this field of mental illness ended when when my position in a program called ACT, Assertive Community Treatment, which dealt with this group of individuals, who had severe mental illness diagnoses that included schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and a few other disorders, but all of these disorders were related to psychosis. And then to be part of this program, you had to have one of these diagnoses, right? So again, that performativity of the social authority, I was, involved in exploring, how that worked, and you also, to qualify for this program, one had either to have like a history of addiction, or criminal record, and then additionally like a long period of homelessness, or the immediate threat of becoming homeless, and with so I don't know how to put it, but almost like prognosis of inability to extricate oneself from homelessness, meaning that there wasn't a support system, and if that individual had become homeless, there was like likelihood of a situation, developing that would end either in death or incarceration. So the qualifications for the program were, fairly extreme, and when my relationship with that program ended, then I became involved in working in sort of gentler mode with individuals with developmental disabilities, or differences, I would prefer to call them. But one of my roles in working with individuals with differences and was as a job developer, and so I would go out into the community, and I would try to find positions for my clients. And I had a client who had a number of challenges in integrating into the community, and one of those challenges was he had Down's syndrome, and another challenge was that he suffered from intermittent periods of psychosis, and physically he was identifiable as having a disability because he had one of his arms was abbreviated, and clearly, unlike Gage, who presents here as other than the eye as normal, right? Then this physical difference, clearly also marked my client. So I had made appointments for an interview for him at a produce market it was either in San Marcos or Escondido, I can't remember. I think it was Escondido. And we would show up, this happened more than one time, and we would show up for these appointments, and I would say, can I speak to the manager? And the manager would come out, and he would say, oh, I'm terribly busy right now. I can't talk to you. I said, well, we did call, we did make an appointment. He said, I'm so sorry, but I can't do it. So after about 3 times, I started to get really extremely angry about this, and I was totally aware of what was going on, right? So I won't use my client's name, but I was saying, just can you just wait in my car? I need I need to talk to this guy. So, he said, yeah, sure. And he also had a number of different things. I always had to take a lot of water with me because he would get really dehydrated, and then there were some physical issues with with other things as well, and so I always had to prepare the car. So he had plenty of water and everything in the car, and saying, go drink water. You need to rehydrate. You have this problem. And so it was good, for him to. He needed to some time out anyway, to some downtime from all of this, and it was good for him to rehydrate. So I went to the manager and I said, look, I said, I've been here a bunch of times, and I get what's going on, and I suspect that you don't want to hire my client because you really don't want someone with a disability working for you. But I also get that you want to be a good person, and you feel guilty about that, and you don't want to just say no because you think that you're sparing my client's feelings, or you're sparing my feelings. And I said, you're not sparing anyone's feelings, you're just wasting my time, and you're wasting my client's time. So if you don't want to hire my client, so now see, when you put it in this way and you become like aggressive or slightly hostile, then the individual will feel like they have a right to to their prejudice and bias, right? So I gave him an opening, like by being openly disdainful of his secret life, right? I gave him the ability to like become angry back and say, yeah, I don't want to hire him. And even like I gave him a way out, because it's like, well, I didn't hire him not because he doesn't have not because he has a disability, but because his case manager or whatever, am I allowed to say it? So anyway, so I gave him an opportunity just to say, no, I don't want to hire him. So of course he did, right? And then we didn't have to bother with it anymore. And then I went back to the car, and I shouldn't use, the name. I'll have to edit that out. I told my client that, it turned out that the position had been filled. So, I didn't feel like I was really misrepresenting to my client the same way that was being misrepresented to me, because my concern for him truly was, protective, and it wasn't about my own self-image as, a good person, that, caught between a rock and a hard place. It was just about, being a caregiver. And I wasn't wasting anyone's time, and I wasn't, making myself feel better about it. But in any case, this whole story is designed, to demonstrate that we have these images of ourselves, and how we're good, and how we belong to these realms of ideas that represent principles of equality and justice and the open society and kinds of thought. But often our languages or our actions betray us. And anyway, I didn't know Jesse Glass's work, his exploitation of the life of Phineas Gage, when I agreed, to have this piece, A Labyrinth of Visions, published in his magazine. But, had I known of it, I wouldn't have had the work published there. And, had I known that I would have been asked to drive to LA to sit through Lou Rowan's reading of his ableist version of Superman in order to receive a copy of my poorly typeset poem in his magazine, I wouldn't have submitted it for publication there either. The way that we look at an individual like Phineas Gage is more important to me than what magazine my work appears in. Because my work is all about the way that we look at individuals like Gage or my client. So that having been said, I'll talk a little bit about the history of my interaction with Aha Dada Books, which was Jesse Glass's publication, and was the third example of a publication that for this particular piece, A Labyrinth of Visions. So once again, Jerome Rothenberg had set up this connection between Aha Dada Books and this work, A Labyrinth of Visions, and so I got this email from Aha Dada Books, and it was like really, this was the first email, and it was like really demanding and really like terse and really, I found it obnoxious, and that should have been like the red light or alarm or whatever, right there. And I should have just said, oh, okay, never mind, whatever. But it was like, Jerome Rothenberg has suggested your work. We need, a copy of this work, by whatever, 2:30, on tomorrow. And so whatever. So I got it to him. So then it sat there with him. So like, even though like the initial demand was get this to us right away. Okay. So then it sat there like for 6 months. And then 6 months later, I got this email, and it said, we're going to publish your work. And then he said, we need your, and I didn't know a lot about publication, but it was the same tone, like we need this right away, whatever, and then first I thought like, that's weird, like that you need, I was really like suspicious about it, but I didn't really want to, I didn't really know what to do. And then the very next day, like after he'd been sitting on my work for 6 months, the very next day I got another email and said, we're really busy here. If you don't want this published, then you can just forget it. So we need to know like now. And I was like, so I really got annoyed by that, because I had felt like I had been patient for 6 months, and then these demands were being made. And then, like, again, total lack of recognition of like certain challenges that I have as someone with, dysgraphia. And it's very difficult for me to do work at the same pace that involves, writing or even typing, than it is for, someone who doesn't have dysgraphia. So these demands being made, like, why can't you respond to my emails, immediately, even though we've been sitting on your work for 6 months? And it's like, well, I didn't say it, but it's like, well, because, I can't, because I have limitations. And it's like, I remember, at one point, like, well, why can't you, this had to do more with writing. It's like, well, why can't you do this, and I really resist like coming out, in public, because it's like one of these things with my client. Like, everyone wants to say, oh, I totally get that. I really care. But then if it's about, a timely completion of a project that affects them, well, can't you just get someone to help you? Not me, but, someone else, right? So I'm very much familiar with the I'm busy, can you talk to us later effect, when people, don't want to come to terms with, who they really are. But anyway, all of that's in the background, and I was getting this like real pressure and like aggression, and it felt like he didn't want to publish the piece, but and was looking for a way out, and I was, ready to give him a way out. And then, but when I called him on it, then it's like, well, no, we need this. So I wasn't sure what was going on with, and the other thing was when I had mentioned to him in the letter, it's like, look, I know you've been sitting on this for 6 months, and now suddenly you need this. Well, then he blamed it on his assistant, right? I think his assistant was named, so I don't know what, but or whatever his name was, and who was being blamed, for the fact that it had initially taken so long. Responded back and said that it had taken him 6 months because he had just gotten married, and I don't remember what it was, and there were all these excuses about like why it took them 6 months, but there was no acceptance of like my need for more than a day to respond to all of these requests, right? So anyway, I was very suspicious about the whole, and I was annoyed, by the fact that there was this big rush. But I decided, well, you want this published, and so, and I knew that, Jerome Rothberg had his work, this book that he did on the treasures of this Buddhist cave in China, and all of the meanings that he ascribed to the various artifacts and images of the Buddha in these iteration poems. And, I had, Jerry had given me a copy of this work, and it looked good, and I thought that, well, Jerry's work looks good. They do good publishing work, so I'll go ahead and I will. So I did this, and then there's a long period of waiting again. So I wait. I don't remember if it was another 6 months. I don't think it was. I think it was a couple of months. And then I get notification announces that your work has been published. So I go, and it turns out that it's not a book at all, right? It's not a physical book. It's an online publication, right? An online publication. So they took like the PDF that I sent them, and they basically like uploaded it to their site. And they I was outraged. It was like, I could do this. This was back in the day where you could get a number of free, personalized websites, and there was I didn't get like how this was a thing. You know what I mean? Like, I totally didn't get how this was a thing, except, wow. So Anyway, that was part of the story. And then I guess because Jesse Glass was angry with me for having called him out on like sitting on my work for 6 months and then making all these demands of me at the last moment, he consistently put the work like at the back page of this site, right? It was like the very, like either the last or the second to the last one, like totally marginalized the way that, you know, he totally enjoyed like making like the dirty monster out of Phineas Gage, right? And like in spite of evidence that I believe like that was available at the time that he did this poem, that, you know, that these stories about Gage were largely like measures of who you are, not who Gage was, right? That's why we say Rorschach test to begin with. So, I mean, just like my client was a Rorschach test for this manager in this produce market. So anyway, you know, the great success of Aha Data publication was that I had a PDF, and you know, I mean, it was fine. It wasn't littered with, you know, typographical errors the way that the one that was produced, that the hard copy was in golden handcuffs, you know. But it's like I had waited all this time for this. I'm sorry, but something I could easily have accomplished in a day. At that time, I think I even had my own site. If not, I had, you know, my own site, you know, shortly after. Now I don't have that anymore. I'm no longer interested in that kind of textuality. But anyway, I thought it was pretty bad. And then I thought it was funny, you know, that he, you know, relegated me, you know, to the back of the bus. You know, well, that's not unfamiliar, right? I mean, what I really like, you know, about a lot of this stuff is that, you know, some of these people now that I have experienced this kind of interaction with are the same people like that are so eager to refer to Trump as a bully. And of course, Trump is a bully, so that's totally reasonable. But look in the mirror, like, in what way, like, is, you know, calling a dysgraphic stupid not an example of bullying? In what universe would that be anything other than an example of bullying? Or in what way does like this personal vendetta that whatever Jesse Glass had against me because I called him out on the hypocrisy of demanding this immediacy when he had sat on the work for 6 months, you know, the vendetta that relegated me to the back of the Aha Data bus. It's just like hilarious. So in any case, it wasn't just me. So I did some investigating, and then I found like all this stuff about Glass, and I'm like, oh my God, what did I get involved with this guy? And so it wasn't just me there, and I can't remember who it was, but there was another individual who, following, you know, Aha Dada's, you know, in quotation mark, publication of his work as a PDF, you know, downloadable online, when you could put it up on your own site and you'd have a better presentation. But anyway, following this guy's publication with Aha Dada Press, he had gotten like a real publisher, right, to present the work and actually make it into a book, and a real book, physical book with pages, you know, all the old-fashioned stuff. And this guy had, you know, announced that his book was going to be, you know, for sale and available on this and this and this and this site. Well, Glass, right? This isn't me. This is somebody else, and I don't remember his name. But Glass like does like this intervention and says like, oh, you know, so Glass publishes this like piece on the guy's site where he's advertising his book and says, this book is available for free at Aha Dada. You know, you can download it or whatever at our site, and like basically like interferes with this guy's ability to make money from his own work. Like Glass thinks that now, because he published the book, that he owns it. I mean, this is how totally screwed up like this a mind is, that believes in I don't know what is it? It's like copyright colonialism. And I don't know what it is exactly. But I remember feeling like, wow, that is just malignancy raw, right? So as soon as I saw that, like, I sent him a letter requesting that he remove my piece from Ahadada. And then, it was funny because it took them like whatever 6 months to get it up there, right? And even though it was just a PDF of pretty much the same thing that I had done, right? And then he refuses to take it down, which shouldn't have been a surprise, because when this guy really got published, Glass thought, he had no right to his own work. So, okay, I totally get it. Like, I get who you are, guy. I totally get who you are. But, it's not easy, for someone like Gage to be a survivor. It's not easy for someone like my client, like, to persist in trying to find a job when there are all these, social markers, and then people who somehow think that, they own you, or they own your work, or, what it might be. So one of the things that I've tried to do, with my own work, is challenge the idea of ownership, as much as I can, and to challenge ideas of identity as much as I can, and to see in the image of someone like Gage, not really an exploitable profit-bearing opportunity, so much as a vehicle for understanding and comprehending the way that we understand our own identities and the identities of others, and the way that these ideas bear upon notions of property and copyright and right, and also repetition, and of language and other things. Like, is language ever really ours? Like, if I say, these words are mine, from now on, the speaking of these words, belongs to me. Does that make it so? Or, in what ways are we multiple, and in what ways do our languages, always derive from the statements of others, or the understandings of others? And it's not so much that it's either ours or not ours. It's what we choose to be as ours. If that makes any sense, I guess. And so there's a number of ways of looking at Gage, and his history, and there are a number of ways of being published. And there are a number of ways of addressing, the social, economic, legal, epistemological foundations of what publication and ownership rights mean. And anyone that's seriously engaged I guess that's a kind of pun, isn't it? Anyone who is seriously engaged in issues, both of that both critique the idea of property in and the way that value is derived under capital. Chomsky does this. Anyone who's seriously engaged in that critique and is also engaged in an exploration of the social construction and hierarchization of positionalities and identities in our culture, needs to look at the social dynamics of, things like publication and presentation in the gallery and museum space, and come to terms with the way that the margins are constructed as well, and to be able to challenge the reifications of what the icon is and what the margin is, right? The fact is that when this division between the normative and the non-normative, whatever that might be, the sane and insane, or this or that, is sort of re-mythologized and re-romanticized, and Gage has use value, the same way that, or not even use value, but profit-bearing value, the same way that Artaud has profit-bearing value, or the same way that, once he passed from this world, Van Gogh, became very useful to the art world, right? But never in his time. And I don't know, my work has always wanted to look at that, and say,